Welcome to Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere with your host, Chris Parker.
And welcome to Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere. I am Chris Parker, and I have Colin Christensen joining me from Canada today. And Colin and I met on the OpenEXO, the Exponential organization community that's, I think, over 6,000 people strong around the world, innovators and thinkers and doers that are trying to make the world a better place. And he has a number of ventures, one of which is the Entrepreneur Roadmap at entrepreneurroadmap.ca. That has, I think, is absolutely incredible, and I'm really looking forward to speaking more with Colin about that during this next 30 minutes or so. So, Colin, thank you so much for joining. Would you please, good sir, maybe share with us what is it that you do and why do you do it?
Wow, that's a big question. Well, for starters, thanks for having me, Chris. It's great to be here. Yeah. Love talking with entrepreneurs, especially when they're international. So international to me, there's so much going on in the world of entrepreneurship. I am one of those guys that's a serial entrepreneur for sure. I've started several ventures over the years, and I love entrepreneurship. I'm super passionate about it. Don't get me started on talking about it too much because I can go on forever. But I have probably 5 businesses right now that I'm working on. And I have a number of teams that are obviously running those, helping me run those businesses. We're reinventing drywall, as an example. We're doing some microloans through starting in Central America and then kind of expanding out. So helping entrepreneurs in developing countries. We are working on we run an accelerator here in Canada, a business accelerator focused on the sustainable development goals. We have the Entrepreneur Roadmap, which is a big one, and that's part of the consulting that I do for businesses. And I know there's something else. We're working on some hemp-based lyocell products and things like that. And I think that about sums it. I'm sure another one will pop up somewhere in there, but those are some of the things I'm up to. Why do I do it? I don't know, man. Maybe it is an inset thing years ago, is just not wanting to work for the man. I've always really loved my freedom, and it's funny because sometimes in entrepreneurship you don't always have a lot of money, so you're hampered in your freedom that way. But now it has gotten better. It's a great time, and I just love the journey and love all the things doing and just really digging in to solve big problems in the world, and for a particular client set or whatever, and trying to figure out how to best make that happen, and then put the team and everything and get it all enabled and making it happen. So that's probably where it all comes from.
Yeah, and not wanting to work for the man. Yeah, sometimes I do consider myself a bit unemployable myself,
yes,
and joyfully so. But I guess we all work for someone, whether it's customers or
absolutely.
Also, on the why you do it, you have, I think, an amazing section of your LinkedIn profile called Challenge You, which is really about overcoming different things in your life. And there's a number of, personal and professional successes and tragedies. Is that also, part of the motivation behind all this as far as life?
Yeah. Chris, it's a really great point. It's funny because I really stress to the entrepreneurs that I work with to separate their business from their life. But in all honesty, you can't fully, because we are a whole human, right? We are everything. We are a little bit about what we do for work. We're a little bit about what we do with our kids, a little bit about what we do with our spouse and our friends and our life and where our dreams and our hopes. And so, Challenge You is Challenge University. I've tried school a number of times, or post-secondary school a number of times, and I just can't do it. Like you, I'm considered unemployable. If the right person figured it out, I think either the right person would hire us every day of the week, right? And our clients do, and the people we're working with obviously do. But life is tough, right? You can get almost anything thrown at you. On LinkedIn profile, we've had kids die, we've had lost our home and businesses, we've had sick, major illnesses, that hopefully nobody will ever have to experience. And you go through all of those, and they do have that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But I think there's a lot of the mental fortitude that even entrepreneurship brings to the table. You've got to figure out, when you're crushed and pushed into a corner and trying to figure things out, you rise to become somebody better, somebody different, somebody new, and probably better, like I said. So, I put that on there, somewhat of a badge of honor. And to those that really get it, it's a bit of a humble brag. But when you've gone through those things, those are the people that I really enjoy doing business with. Some of my closest friends and colleagues in the business world are guys that have just gone through the ringer, and we know that we can count on each other. We know that we know what we're made of. What do you get when you squeeze a lemon? You know what happens, right? And so somebody that hasn't been forged in that fire might not have the same outcome when things blow up.
Yeah, I also, I guess myself, having been crafted through my own life, I guess as we all are. Yeah. But some of my dearest friends were actually, work colleagues that we went through the ringer, so to speak, together and triumphed or suffered. And I think that sort of comradeship of sort of a shared experience as well. Yeah. Sometimes shared scars, yeah. And embarrassments as well. So it's no, when I read that, I was really I guess impressed, in awe, sat there reading it in some respect of like, wow. And I'm wondering, why don't they have that as a standard section on LinkedIn of just life events, because that is that says so much about someone. So if people are listening, Colin Christensen on LinkedIn, and I'll put the his link to that on the show notes as well. It's an impressive, vulnerable thing to do, and I appreciate it. You also have been very giving and very open with really so much knowledge and expertise on the Entrepreneur Roadmap at entrepreneurroadmap.ca. 7 steps to success, I guess, or probably part of a cycle. Can you share a little bit of that story? Because when I looked at that, I was also just, wow, there's so much giving here and so much expertise that's just there, available for people. And that's why I was so eager to get you on here to share that, not only yourself and your experience, but also these tools you're sharing. So sure. What is the big story behind that?
Thanks. Yeah. Going through the ventures myself over the years, it doesn't matter how many mentors you have, doesn't matter how much you think you know, you never know enough. And of course, if you look at the overall statistics, somewhere 95% of businesses fail. Now, that includes guys that, went and did contracting work for a while and then went and got a job again. There's people that might have started a network marketing company and then, threw in a towel at some point. So there's a broad spectrum there. But we know that entrepreneurship comes with a lot of failure. And so, but what happens is, the scariest stat for me is, 95% of businesses fail, but 75% of those that fail never try again. And that to me is heartbreaking. Right? Because as I do, that when you've gone through the battle a couple of times, you start to figure it out. The best description I had, somebody described this once, and I forget where I heard it, but I love it. You're walking down a street and you fall into a hole. That's entrepreneurship, right? And it's dark and it's black and you can't find anything, and you're fumbling around trying to find out what you need, and you eventually find a flashlight or a lighter, and look around and start finding a ladder and some food, and you slowly work your way out of the hole, only to walk another 20 feet and fall into another one. Now the next time you fall into it, you get a little bit better. You remember, oh yeah, there's got to be a light in here somewhere. You try to find some food and a ladder, and eventually you get better at getting out of the hole. And so what happens is entrepreneurship, that entrepreneurial journey, gets better and better and better each time. It's never perfect, and that's maybe the challenge of it all. But the fact that you get to know some of the things is really, really good. So if we could take all of that wisdom and knowledge that we've learned over the years and distill it down into a couple of simple things, like say 7 steps that you could follow early on, I believe that we would have a lot less failure, right? I call it needless failure. You're going to fail. Sometimes you got to shoot your business in the head because it's a zombie and you need to end it, right? End the pain for everybody. But sometimes there's so much failure that happens because you just didn't know something. And again, we can't know everything, but if you follow some of the fundamental rules, you're going to be okay. And that's what I've tried to do. So I've tried to take a lot of that, and some of them are mine, and some of them are just things that I've read, and some of them are, pretty common knowledge. But just putting them into a nice, simple, very simple, easy to follow format is where I was trying to go with it. And so getting it out so that we could really end that needless failure for entrepreneurs. I think, and I think you do too, entrepreneurs are sometimes at a necessity. I don't have a job. I need to pay for my family, and I need to create some income somehow. So there's that group. But then sometimes it's just, I got an idea and I want to do something on the side, or make a few $100 a month extra, or, create the next Facebook or whatever it is. But those people, they all need to learn, and we so much better off in the world if we had them in it. And we just want to try to smooth the path and make the road a little bit easier for them to get to that place where we can all benefit. So that's really what it's coming from.
And how does it work? Meaning, I guess one of my other questions is, how much of this knowledge or wisdom can you really appreciate until you've fallen in the hole? I guess that's one aspect. But on the website, there's on the header, there's the 7 steps, and there's a start here button. What does that journey look like for someone who goes, hey, Colin has clearly learned some lessons through falling in his holes, and I'd like to, piggyback on that wisdom. How can they benefit from that?
Yeah. Well, I'll run through it really, really fast. So the first thing I try to do, the start here really takes you to the next question, which is, okay, where are you at in your journey, right? There's a very big difference between just starting, somebody who runs and established as a business for 5-10 years, somewhere in there, and then somebody who's actually trying to exit. Right. So I kind of break those into the categories. And then the next question I typically will ask is, okay, what size of business are you trying to build? Or are you looking to build, you have built, or are trying to get rid of or sell or move on to the next chapter? And so it's usually solopreneur, somebody that has no employees, very little investment needed, to somebody who probably has a location, some employees, and some investment, to large being hundreds of employees, large scale investment and things like that. And so that's what I've tried to do. And then inside of that, I usually add some quick tips for each of those different areas. Like there's, again, just a couple of things. I'm imagining that most of the entrepreneurs out there don't have a lot of time to be spending, researching and studying their business. That's why, you can go and take a Harvard thing on entrepreneurship, but it's free and it just expects 40 hours of your time. Right. But it's these long courses and lots of reading and lots of lessons where I'm like, okay, how do I break it down into the simplest? Here's the things you need to know. Come in, work on it, and then take off if you need to. Come back and work on it when you have time. And so that's what I've tried to do, is breaking it out that way. The 7 steps that once you figure that out, once you get through those first few questions, now you can start going into the 7 steps. The 7 steps are, one is really focused on the entrepreneur. Balance, productivity, life planning, getting an understanding of where you want to go in your life before you start your business if you can, but also just really understanding how to be a productive and healthy entrepreneur. The second step is all about knowing your customers. Third step is all about your finances. Fourth step is all about strategic planning and kind of where you want to get to and how you're going to get there. Step 5 is all about building out your team and how to motivate and inspire and hire, and when to hire, who to hire, how to hire. And then step 6 is about processes and duplication. Step 7 is about delegation and kind of pushing it off your plate, maturing and improving and getting it better. So inside of each of those, there's a bunch of little smaller tools. Those are the categories, and then the tools are smaller. And there's resources of books you can read, and sometimes other companies that you can go and get help from as well. But I've tried to just keep the tools very, very simple. I call it the Goldilocks zone, right? That place you can go super deep and know everything you need to know about consumer packaged goods. I don't do that, right? But I've also tried to make it more relevant than just high platitude. And so here's the fundamentals in each of those areas.
I thank you for the overview. And again, people can find it at entrepreneurroadmap.ca for Canada. I was impressed and delighted to see that the step one was really about the entrepreneur, and you titled it, I think, Healthy Entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what did you find in that pit that you fell in yourself that actually, inspired you to put self-reflection and self-knowing as the first step on the entrepreneurial journey? Because I don't often see that. And I think it's brilliant, like, hey, why are you here? And who are you? Are you sure? I guess there are questions that I think are probably being asked there.
That's, that is a big one. So, I mean, there's some amazing books on how to business, right? Or how to entrepreneur, but a lot of them are based on just the business. And one of the gaps that I saw, and it really hit me when I was talking to another author, actually, and I'm like, yeah, the thing that's missing is what goes on here, and what goes on in our head. If you've gone through a failure, which as an entrepreneur, clearly 95% of us have, then the stuff you have to wrestle with internally. Like, I lost, $4.5 million of other people's money. That was terrible, and it hurt so bad, and it still hurts and stings to this day. But the lessons learned from that is invaluable, right? But the funnier part was, more closely to the problem, you come through that, and now you want to start another business, or even go back out into the working world, or provide for your family. How do you get your head around the failure that you had? And part of that is separating out you from the failure. The failure was an event that happened outside of you as the entrepreneur. It doesn't mean that you're a failure, but still, you've got to wrestle with that intellectually and possibly spiritually, and all the different ways that are going to come with it. And you've got to start having the confidence that you can do it again. So what does that look like? And part of it is where I really started was that big picture. Let's look at your life. Where do you want it to go? I mean, and that's really going to be the motivation for a lot of it too. If I want a life that looks like this, am I choosing the right vehicle? Like, don't choose, if you're only looking for a couple $100 an extra month, don't try to create a next massive software program or go and buy yourself a franchise. That's just lunacy. You're not going to be happy. And so being able to kind of match those two pieces and make sure they're balanced, and make sure you know where you're going, but also how to stay productive, how to stay positive, how to keep the big picture in mind when the world is crashing down around you. Again, you look at that LinkedIn profile, there's some pretty big stories there. And, the stories that we tell ourselves are really, really important, and being able to keep your eye on the prize, as it were.
Yeah. And earlier, we spoke about separating the entrepreneur from the business a bit, but then they are also, inextricably linked as well. What you're triggering is through catastrophic failure, how do you maintain self or self-love, if you will, self-care, while going through failure? And I believe it's probably also when you go through success, meaning how do you maintain self and self-love and self-care and self-respect? I think in my experience of my entrepreneurial ventures, it's literally a roller coaster. And what I found through suffering is if my emotions were tied to the performance, that moments of the business, then I would literally go insane.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? How do you separate your self from the business while investing yourself in the business?
Well, that's a $1 million question, and I'll try to give my answer. And I think, hopefully it'll be applicable to a lot of people. But the first thing, I think, really comes down to knowing what I'm shooting for, right? The businesses are going to come and go. I have 5 businesses, and I'm an administrator for a church, and I have 3 teens, right? And I'm a happily married guy, right? And so I've got just a ton of stuff on the go at any given time. And at least one of those projects is a massive passion project that takes a lot of time and energy to do, right? So how do you separate all of that out from me? So I do a couple things. One is I make sure that I have a very balanced week. right? For starters, I usually do, every now and again, I'll do a little thing I call it 7Fs. It's not new. It's not me. Zig Ziglar talked about it really well. A couple of guys do it really well, and I created a little app. It's in the on the pages in there called the 7Fs. But it's friends, family, fitness, finances, whatever it is, fun. I don't even know them all. Faith. And what's your balance right now? Like as of today, where do you sit? And if you're not nice and round, it's probably that you're out of balance, and you're going to have a very rough wheel, right, going forward. And so trying to smooth that out, even if they're low, at least they're balanced, right? So making sure that you have time with your family and friends and finances and working all those things out to stay balanced. But the other thing is that for me, and one of those things is keeping that balance is my faith. Like, I'm a Christian guy, and so I spend my morning where I don't pick up a phone. I don't touch anything. I just get into, the scriptures for me and some meditation or prayer, or whatever you want to call it. And just centering on something far bigger than me. It's not about the businesses. The businesses are going to come and go, right? My family may come and go. I may die tomorrow. They may die tomorrow. I don't know. But, where do we keep that center and really stay focused on something much bigger than ourselves? And so keeping that in balance helps a lot of the other things keep in balance. But making sure I get good sleep, I recognize that even with 5 businesses, there's no way I can do everything. And so delegation is important, but also just getting a really good night's sleep. My progress deteriorates rapidly if I don't get good rest. And so setting, a proper bedtime and a proper get up time, nice and early, and I can get everything done. And I work harder than a lot of people out there, but I get a lot done too, because I'm very effective and efficient in it. So that's probably where some of it comes from. But a lot of it is just centered in those tools in step 1. And there's a whole suite. Some will work, some might not for you, and try them out and figure it out, right?
I've never heard of the 7Fs, at least not consciously, but I'll definitely I'll look it up, and I'll put a link to it somehow in the tips in the show notes.
It's just /7Fs, like 7, the number 7Fs, and behind the URL.
So I'll find that. And it was some time ago, when I first went out of university, and I was doing sales for GTE, General Telephone, and there was a book called Permission to Win that came out, and it had, I think, like 12 domains of life, and and it resonated with me with the 7Fs, and what I have done many times is actually did my own little self-scoring, So where am I 1 to 10? It's not scientific, but just reflect and say, where am I now, and where do I want to be? And I know with myself, and probably like most of the people, we tend to practice and focus on the things we're already good at. Like, oh, this feels good, let me do more of that. When actually, maybe this other physical part of your body, or your physical self is suffering, and but I'm uncomfortable, so I avoid it. And so that kind of thing just helps me sort of
yes,
I guess, keep myself sort of accountable, if you will. You triggered me with something earlier about reinventing drywall. I did not know this part about you. I think I saw something on your LinkedIn about that, but why does drywall need reinventing?
That's why I say it. That's, I often encourage my entrepreneurs to come up with 2 words that, and obviously that worked a little bit. Drywall, have you worked with drywall before?
I have.
It's stinking heavy, right?
Yeah.
And,
okay.
And it's actually surprisingly, for something that's made out of gyprock or gypsum, it's still got a ton of chemicals and sometimes fiberglasses, and it's not necessarily good. So there's some carcinogens. So we've been, the heavyweight thing though, it's one of those things. What is the real problem? Heavyweight drywall is a problem. So they keep constantly trying to make it lighter and still structurally strong. But still, even that lightweight stuff is still very heavy. It's rock after all. But what happens is a lot of the workers, when they're going and they're doing this, they throw their back out. So only certain people can be drywallers, right? And so it's very heavy. So we're trying to figure out how to keep it structurally sound and make it significantly lighter. And so, 10 to 15% lighter than the lightest weight stuff that's already on the market. And so we've succeeded so far. We've got prototypes that are out there. We've got patents kind of going on it. We're coming up with commercial samples next. But we are, I won't say weights or anything, but 100% natural. So, and we're looking at being fireproof to the standards of the drywall. Fireproof is more of a time to burn rather than, I mean, it's rock, it doesn't really burn. Paper does, but we're trying to change that. And then also critter proof, mold proof, antimicrobial type stuff. So all of that, and then a firewall.
I guess acoustics is important as well.
Yes, acoustics to a degree. I mean, you can do acoustics with insulation. I mean, if there's no insulation between me and the next wall, it's still not that acoustically sound. Yeah. But the insulation between it is what really makes the difference. But our rating is important. So having a rating of warmth is got some warmth to it too. And surprisingly, more air or more space creates acoustics, and it also creates better acoustics, and it also creates better R rating too. So these are all things we're playing with, and I mean, this is ridiculous. We're going against, I forget what it is now, $40 billion industry in the U.S. alone, and it's dominated. 93% of it is dominated by 5 people, right, and 5 companies. Wow. And so we're coming at it from a slightly different angle. We're looking at either licensing it, or we don't want to get into manufacturing, but we're just trying to create something that's new and innovative and better for the world. And construction has typically been the last bastion, the last holdout on the new frontier of innovation. So we're hoping to move that along a little bit.
Yeah. I have to ask: is your hemp industry related to your building material industry? Is that part of the all naturalness here, or are those two separate?
Some of it, yeah. That was some of the things. Some of the things. Now there's a brilliant company out of the UK actually doing some full blown hemp based drywall and plaster, and Adaptivate, good bunch of guys, great guys. And so we've been looking at that. We've been kind of back and forth and different things. Years ago, I was in a hemp accelerator program, and some guy asked for this, I want hemp-based drywall. And so we found that stuff out of the UK, and that kind of helped fulfill some of that. But we're looking at it from a slightly different angle. We're not trying to just go at it from the pure hemp side, although there's some hemp that will probably play a part in it as well.
Nice. Well, fascinating. And again, for people, Colin Christensen on LinkedIn, there's links to all these different, it's just a marvelous LinkedIn page to see because there's so much going on there. So looping back to the entrepreneur roadmap, what is the perfect customer of that? Meaning if people are out there listening and there's, exponential thinkers and entrepreneurs and as well as corporate types, there's probably also all types. By design, everyday entrepreneurs everywhere. We try to keep it extremely broad. Who have you made this for?
Okay, well, it's originally made for specifically entrepreneurs, except that's not who I necessarily market it to, unless it's through something like this. Because you try pegging down an entrepreneur, as you said, everyday entrepreneurs everywhere, right? I mean, they're everywhere. You can't pin them down. So I've designed it to be actually really adopted by mentors and ecosystems, because mentors, a lot of mentors want to help entrepreneurs, but they don't have a framework. And so we've developed a very, very simple, very lean framework for any mentor to be able to work with any entrepreneur. And so they can really distribute it. I've got 5 entrepreneurs. I wish they knew how to do things. And so we're going to send it to them. On the ecosystem, it's really for those, all those companies. Everybody wants to help entrepreneurs, right? There's so many ecosystems out there, but what they don't look after is how do they deal with the entrepreneurs that they say no to? No, we can't give you money. No, we don't have enough space. No, you're not at the right area, right? Those are some big no's, and they don't have a way to do it. So my suggestion is throw them into the entrepreneur roadmap, let them cycle it up on their own, and then they can come back. And so it is designed wholeheartedly for the entrepreneur. But the focal group of where we get it into those channels is really through mentors, really through ecosystems, and being able to develop it out that way. So that's, but it also works just because the tools are there. I do this on my own, like you do, consulting, where we'll go into a $20 million client and we'll use the tools with them too. It works for everybody, but it's designed for that kind of earlier stage, get going kind of entrepreneurs. So Traction by Gino Wickman, Scaling Up by Vern Harnish, The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni, Scale by John Hoffman, brilliant and amazing books. Take those and add step 1, and you've got a lot of similarities, but mine kind of covers all of it, and I don't want to say dumbs it down, but makes it a simpler language and then more designed for those early stage guys.
And some of those books I did, as I've gone back to your website, under your blog, there's actually quite some book summaries or book reviews, which I thought was kind of cool. So I'm looking at Scaling Up from Vern Harnish here, and it's sort of you really just, if people want to know what those books are all about, then it's definitely go there. So it's fantastic. And as far as communities, we met through the Open EXO, Exponential Community. Maybe as my last question, what does that community mean to you? What does that bring to you, and what do you bring to it? Why are you investing time at the Open EXO community around the world?
That's a great question. A couple things. One of the things that got me reintroduced to it is my two of my teens got accepted into the Boston EXO intern program. So all of a sudden I had 2 kids in the house doing the EXO internship, which was awesome. And it really kind of got me reconnected. But I had found out about it through Singularity University several years ago. They've had 2 in Canada now, and they were great. But that's the way I think. I have a friend of mine who's on the X Prize board with Peter Diamandis, and so I've kind of been aware of this. I love the EXO methodology, the organization. I think the world needs this. Again, business is tough, and we make it tougher by trying to overbuild everything, right? Overstructure everything. And the EXO works to be very lean and agile. They focus on a couple of very important things, and that allows, I think, all organizations to be able to kind of scale a little bit better, scale a bit more rapidly, think at least outside of the box of common business. And that's very important. I'm very, very practical, and that's one of the things I like about EXO is it just brings it a lot more practical.
Yeah, I love it. And honestly, even in the EXO exponential world, sometimes we can overthink and overcomplicate. And that was one of my inspirations for the sort of the simplicity approach that I championed through Ebullient. And Eric Patel at Boston EXO and that group. I've known Eric for a while, again, through the community. There's so many incredible people there. Yeah. So I'll put the link to the Boston EXO internship program, which was a summer program that I think there was multiple teams that went through there, and it was
8 countries.
It was an incredible learning. And when I was listening to what was happening there, I was really jealous. Like, what? Damn it! What? As a university kid, I didn't get exposed to that stuff.
I know, right?
I was busy doing my accounting degree and program. So lovely. Colin, thank you so much. I love it. Thank you so much for the time. I'll put the links to the 7 Fs, also to the Boston EXO internship program. If people would like to get in touch with Colin, then also on the show notes, Colin Christensen on LinkedIn and entrepreneurroadmap.ca. So Colin, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for the opportunity, Chris.
Learn more at ebullient.com/podcast.